Greetings, fellow scribes! Welcome back to the archive. This week, I am kicking off a new monthly sub-series on my channel. I'm going to start covering Warhammer 40k 9th edition from, of course, my perspective. I'm going to be looking at armies I'm building, how I picked armies, etc., etc., and how I'm looking at new units I've gained for these armies, or just, impressions on things I've run into. I'm starting off, though, as sort of a road to 9th edition, where I go into my tradition with every new edition of starting a new army. Now, for 9th edition, I've ended up starting 2 new armies. The Necrons, of course, from the Indomitus Box were a no-brainer. But then I ran into some issues figuring out what to do with the Space Marines. And that's what I'm going to talk about this month. How I decided to go with the army I'm going with for my new Marine army for the edition. Which, by the way, will be my 3rd unique Marine army. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as I talk about how I made my chapter choice. So, first let me start off with, I've been playing Warhammer 40k since 2nd edition. I sat out 4th edition, but that was pretty much the only edition I ever truly sat out completely. And I have built armies for each edition. At one point, I had a Eldar army, a Tau army, a Grey Knights army. My, since 2nd edition, Space Wolves army, Sisters of Battle army. And 8th edition, I had built a Vanilla Marines army. I had used the successor chapter rules to go with a White Scar successor chapter that was thematically built as jungle fighters. I made a lot of choices for them that don't quite match with the normal White Scars doctrines, like they have no bikes. I only take airborne vehicles for them, unless the vehicle can have a flamer or similar weapon. I've been trying to get together the stuff to build a Redeemer for them. For example, just because a Land Raider Redeemer is 2 huge honking flamers. That was sort of a case of, I wanted to build something different. I've been playing Space Wolves for years, and I wanted to see what a normal Marine chapter would be like. And also, I wanted to use a lot of the new Primaris stuff, and since I wasn't sure how Primaris would really fit into Space Wolves, I figured I'd make a new chapter just to, do a blend of the best of the Primaris stuff out and the best of the traditional. And that's how the Scarred Hydras were born. But Indomitus came out. And at first I was really looking at it. And I was going to basically split all the minis up in it between the Scarred Hydras and the Space Wolves. And as I sat looking at it, looking at how everything went, I really noticed this. These guys are geared heavily for close combat. This whole box is. You have the Assault Intercessors. You have the Blade Guard Veterans. The Lieutenant and the Captain are all close combat characters. Or, close combat units. The Judiciar he's pretty much built to be a master of close combat. He wants to get in close combat, so he has his blade parry in effect with his invulnerable save in the fight phase. And of course, you've got the chaplain, who's always been one of those great central melee characters. And of course, the Outrider bikes. They all have chain swords. Those are Adepti's chain swords. So they're also a good close combat unit. And this got me really thinking. You know, I could do these all Space Wolves. It'd really be good, but the look of them doesn't fit. The shields are like a knight's shields. The storm shields on the captain, the lieutenant, and the blade guards are like knight shields. They don't really fit either of my armies. Space Wolves would be using the rounded Space Wolf storm shields, while the Scarred Hydras, they would be using much simpler, less ornate shields. They wouldn't be having all the ornamentation on their armor either. Mostly because they're a practical chapter. They strip everything down to its barest minimum. They don't have the aculas on their armor. They don't have all the skull iconography or stuff like that. Because first off, it interferes with the camo pattern that they use. Because they use a camo pattern, not the bright colors of every other Marine chapter. So it's like, alright. So I'm going to do a new chapter. What chapter am I going to do? I'm not going to do Black Templars. Because, well, I've never really liked the Black Templars, for one. And two, I like the psychic phase. I like having psychers in my armies. Whether it be the Librarian and Phobos armor for my Scarred Hydras, whether it be my small circle of various rune priests for my Space Wolves, because at one point I used to run them with a Wordstone Brotherhood detachment. Back when you had detachments that had special abilities. And that was just a bunch of psychers. And so it's like, alright. So, I want to run something neat. I want to run something I haven't done before. What chapter am I going to do? And I thought about it, and I came down to two choices. I could either run the Celestial Lions. They're a successor chapter of the Imperial Fists. They have the most gaudy paint scheme ever. But with them having still been recovering from their near destruction at the Mannheim Gap on the Third War for Armageddon, they would be a great justification for an all Primaris company. But the other choice was Blood Angels. And Blood Angels have recently been nearly destroyed on their homeworld of Baal. Most of their new recruits have been being turned into Primaris Marines. So that's a great justification there as well. And so we came down to trying to figure out what I was going to do. And then came the announcement that there was going to be a new Space Marine Codex. This Space Marine Codex would include all the chapters. It would basically be like going back to 3rd edition, where the Space Marine Codex was the thing for all Marines, and then there'd be supplements that would have the extra stuff for the different chapters. For the different special chapters, like the Dark Angels, the Blood Angels, the Space Wolves, etc. Okay. Now here's the problem. If I were to do Celestial Lions, I would use the options for creating your own chapter. You know, they would be a Imperial Fist successor chapter still, but they would have their own chapter doctrines to basically reflect their sort of let's charge in for the guns no matter what the odds mentality. But I don't know if those options are going to stick around in the 9th edition Codex. Because Marines had previously had a Codex that gave them all sorts of options where you could take it a disadvantage and an advantage to your chapter. And those were kind of similar, sort of, to this. And then it was a case of they got this in the edition, and then a new edition came out a couple months later, and the new edition was followed shortly by a new Marine Codex, which did away with the ability to make your successor chapters mechanically distinct. And so, I kind of didn't want to do that with the Celestial Lions. I didn't want to risk. I did all the work picking out the right pair of chapter tactics for them, and then we lose the ability to do that. So instead, I decided, yep, I'm going to go with Blood Angels. And thus comes the fun part. The researching the Blood Angels. Deciding how I want to do things. Which company I want them to be. And ultimately, I'm going with the 4th company. I don't know anything about it right now, but I do know that it's called the Knights of Baal. And since I'm going with the more knightly helmets and such for the Primaris in the box set, I figure that's the great way to go. Let's, just go ahead and go with that. Now, of course, first decision I make is, after that is, I need Mephiston. Mephiston is just absolutely awesome. And frankly, his miniature is cool. So, I'm going to use Mephiston, not as my warlord. I'm going to use the captain in the Indomitus box as my warlord. I've got to pick other things yet. But right now, I'm still in the process of researching the Blood Angels. See, I've always kind of wanted to play a Blood Angels army, but I never had a reason to before now. So, next month, I'm going to talk about going through the process of actually building and planning out the army. Both of them. And this is doing this without the codexes, because, they're not out yet. They're going to be out in October. So, until next month, I would like you all to remember to have fun and keep gaming. Also, the Emperor protects!